What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Sports Medicine Broadcast. This is Sean Reedy. I'm kind of filling in for Jeremy. He's running around all crazy. This week's guests, we have Mike McKenney, Josh Ogden, Greg Evans, and Mike Hoppper. Jeremy's still running around like crazy, and he's probably going to be doing that the rest of the day. So join in on our conversation at the sportsmedicinebroadcast.com. That's hashtag #TheSMB, sportsmedicinebroadcast.com. Today's episode, Traveling ATR. Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good.
Doing well.
So I guess we're going to start out with kind of a question for everybody. How many games do you play on the road per year? What's the traveling like? What's the athletic training room setup like that y'all bring with you?
Mike, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So currently I work in Hockey East primarily as my travel sport. And what that means is we generally have a 34-game schedule total for our entire season before we even start considering playoffs. And roughly about half of those or a little bit more are on the road. Now, I'm in a little bit of a unique situation that Hockey East in New England, with the exception of our travel trips to Notre Dame, is a little bit condensed. So unless I'm traveling to Vermont or Maine or Yukon this weekend, I'm either home and home or I'm either away for a while. So it's one or the other. So, and it's usually almost always bus trips, but due to the nature of our travel, it also includes occasional international trips. For example, last year we traveled to Belfast, Northern Ireland for a tournament over American Thanksgiving. So there can be some unique challenges present in addition to just throwing stuff on a bus and going on the road.
Yeah, I'm in a situation where I work primarily with Division I baseball now. We play 56 games total, not including postseason conference tournament or any NCAA after that. But kind of unlike Mike, I'm fortunate to be in the South, and especially early in the season, a lot of teams come to us. So early on, I think we have 9 games in the first 2 weeks, and only one of those is on the road. Overall, we'll have typically 17 to 20 true road games each year, and that's going to vary anything from a full three-game weekend series. Sometimes we'll be on the road for an entire week, like we've done in the past for spring break. And my road trips may be an hour and a half down the road and back the same night. I may be gone for a full week. It really varies. Primarily bus trips, but we also have a couple of commercial flights each year. For example, this year we're going up to University of Washington for a weekend. And then occasionally a charter flight thrown in there that makes, travel much, much easier.
So obviously two varying in sports, not saying that that's the only background, but two sports that vary a lot in what you need to bring. I know, Josh, myself, when I was with Texas State and their baseball program, we had to bring a lot of rehab stuff, especially like you said, you're gone for sometimes a week and you had to bring a lot of your rehab supplies, things like that. What do you guys bring? Josh, I guess start with you since bringing that up. What do you come with?
Well, starting off the rehab supplies, that's going to depend a lot on where we're going and what they allow us access to, and then also how the hotel gym is outfitted. If we're going to a place where either we have access to their weight room, which we typically do, or if we're at a hotel that has decent free weight, I may not have to take as much in terms of rehab equipment. Most of our shoulder care program at this point is done, with free weights with 3 to 5 pounds. So if we have a 5-pound dumbbell, we can typically do it. And that's where the research comes in on the front end to find out where we're staying, and then also the university we're going to, what we need to, or what we're going to have access to. If we don't have access to that, I take, selection of all color TheraBands and TheraTube, and typically dumbbells, like a pair of 2-pounders and a pair of 5 pounds. So when I'm checking into the airport and they go, holy crap, what's in this weight? It's like, oh, yeah. Outside of that, I'm going to travel, all the standard wound care stuff. Different for me, I don't take a ton of tape. I mean, for a 3-game weekend, I may take 8 to 10 rolls of tape and 20 to 30 rolls of power flex. So I pack like that. And then, baseball specific, we have a lot of, situations where we need eye drops, eye wash, that kind of thing. So I've got, I put on the show notes, I travel with 2 to 3 different bags. Each of those has, multiple eye care products in it. I take a glove kit because I'm the glove repair guy too. It's a little bit different than, my probably traveling with hockey. I don't do a whole lot of taping. I do a lot of manual therapy and hands-on stuff. So a lot of eye wash, a lot of lip balms, that kind of thing. A lot of topical creams too, because baseball players are addicted to Alsiha.
Yeah, as far as things I travel with, biasing on the rehab side, our care model is really based off of doing an enormous amount of corrective exercise with emphasizing movement. So I actually don't need a ton of equipment. I can do a lot with power bands, and I'll take anywhere between, I don't know the poundages off the top of my head, but basically a light, medium, and extremely heavy band, depending on what I'm doing. A couple small, basically they look like tiny dodgeballs. They're about that big. And a couple mini bands and things like that. But a lot of, since I'm not on the road for as long as baseball is, and I sympathize with Josh because I worked in college baseball prior to coming to this setting, so I know exactly where he's coming from. But most of my work on the road is really focused on taking care of things that happen in a game or recovery-based interventions following games, because we'll play say Friday night and Saturday night, and for Division I hockey, it's a really tight turnaround for a body to adapt to a very highly physical, demanding game. So we'll do a lot of, I bring my Normatex with me. I've got a game ready, a table, and a large amount of stuff basically just in case. So my splint kit and all the standard things that you would have with that, like crutches, splints for all joints, elbow, knee, shoulder, and wrist. And honestly, a lot of really basic athletic training supplies, because I don't do a ton of taping either. I can think of one person off the top of my head that might occasionally need tape once a week, if that. So a lot of it's really based towards, again, that post-game, pre-game treatment recovery aspect.
So, I mean, everything I'm hearing here, and Jeremy had kind of sat down for a second, but now he's up and going again, is similar to stuff that we're using, obviously, in the college football setting. A lot of recovery stuff, a lot of stuff that's not your typical, especially when you're talking with a high school athletic training area, is the foam rollers, the soft tissue stuff. Sometimes, like we've with our staff, or with the staff there at Rice, a lot of them being certified or having experience in dry needling and stuff like that, the needles, those type of things. A lot more to work on the kids, work on the student athletes, where I would imagine in Jeremy's world, that's probably a lot different.
Actually, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Mike. Mike, you travel with teams. I've never spent an overnight with a high school team, just whenever I've taken students on field trips, and that's a completely different story. So, Mike, why don't you talk about some of your experience in traveling with a overnight with a high school team?
Okay, so we travel quite a bit, actually, at Bishop Lynch, and mostly with, well, really, I guess, any sport. When we hit into the playoffs, almost all of our trips tend to be overnight trips because of the distance. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't tend to take a whole lot with me as far as treatment and things like that go, because we tend to travel later in the day, and it's bus trips. So we tend to get to the hotel at 6, 7 o'clock at night, and once we do any type of meal, and they do team meetings and things like that, it's time to go to bed. But we'll tend to take some stretching straps, things like that. If we're going to be gone more than a day, I will like to take a game ready with us, with the various body parts, especially our knee and ankle. And then just your basic, your normal supplies. And we always just make sure we take more than what we normally would use. But it sounds like we use a lot more supplies than a lot of you guys do, as far as taping goes. Except my baseball players don't get Power Flex for anything. So
I wish mine didn't.
If they do, they get it on their own. And really the tape is the same way. We don't provide them with tape for their wrists. So we tend to keep that tape more for what we really need it for, not so that they look good on TV that they're not on.
Swag tape.
Yes.
One of the things I like to point out about traveling on the road is you can probably hear there's a lot of differences in like materials between high school, college, and I think a lot of focus of athletic trainers in different settings are like, they have these items I don't have. And those are arguments I usually don't like very much, because I don't think you need to rely on supplies specifically, but rather your rehab philosophy and how you're preparing your athletes to travel. So say some schools I'm partial to having compacts and marked pros. If you don't have those, you can still do lots of other different things that'll contribute to adaptations over the weekend, and recovery aspect of sports. So I don't want people to listen to, say, like what us as Division I programs and Division I hockey have and think, well, I can't travel like that. Because honestly, a lot of what I do is based off of not the materials I have, but more the theory behind the rehab plans we're planning for our athletes.
Right. I would 100% agree with that. I have the Normatec Game Ready compacts, and typically those go on the road with me. But if it's a one day down and back trip, maybe not. But again, when it comes to travel for us and looking at long-term health of the student athlete over the course of the season, that's not just the treatment that I'm doing with them while we're on the road. That's, our nutritionist is involved, strength conditioning program, everything, in terms of nutrition, recovery, and, making them resilient and adaptable to go on the road.
A lot of, I know obviously I come from a little bit of a football background, or most recently I've come from a football background, where we have sideline stuff. We have things that go to the hotel. We have, so a lot of our athletic training room oriented items, the things that you'll see for that recovery, for the night prior to the game. We'll see a lot of, and then obviously your things that go to the field, to the facility that you're going to play at. So do you guys separate a lot of that stuff up as well? And how much, especially, I guess, when you're staying for a couple days, Josh, probably you could answer this a little bit better. Yeah. And you're spending, a couple days here, a couple days, or a couple days in these different areas, and you're back and forth to the hotel, to the field. How do you guys separate that? Because obviously it's it's a big difference than football, but.
Right. No, absolutely. I typically travel anywhere. I have my main bushwalker kit that goes everywhere I go. And I typically travel with anywhere from 2 to 4 other bags with rehab equipment and recovery modalities, that kind of thing. So absolutely, that gets set up at the hotel when I get there. The Normatec, the Game Ready, the rehab bag, that stuff tends to stay in my hotel room, and then I separate out basically what, for football perspective, what you would consider the sideline stuff. The kit with the wound care, what tape I do take, all the different liquids, glove kit, that kind of stuff, that goes to the field, and the more recovery-based modalities, those stay in my hotel room.
Yeah, we're kind of the same when we get to, so for example, we're traveling to Yukon tomorrow, actually. So when I say travel to Yukon, everyone's going to laugh at me out on the other side of the country. It's 2.5 hours from here, so it's close bus ride. So East Coast commuting. But what we'll do is we'll go down there and we'll drop off all of our equipment that's not already down at the rink. So then we'll leave my splint kit and just stuff that I don't need in a hotel room. Once we get to a hotel room or a hotel, my Normatex, Game Ready, if it needs, or Complexes and Mark Pros, those all just disappear to rooms, and I just know who has them. So those pretty much stay at the hotel. And then I always take my med kit with me just because I'm paranoid of not having it, to be honest with you, that there's a lot, it just takes somebody falling down in the hotel and that kit's at the rink that I'm not prepared to take care of it. So I always keep that with me just in case. But to be honest, 99% of the time I don't use it. And that 1% of the time it saves a lot of headaches. And I also have a small bag that's just with rehab stuff and a portable table. I always travel with a portable table, mostly because I don't want to sacrifice a treatment surface on the road for anything else, because I want to get the same quality of care across the board.
So I know that, go ahead.
I was going to say that's one thing that I wish that I could travel with would be a treatment table. But I definitely want to use a hotel bed.
Joshua, why is that? Why can you not travel with a treatment table?
Because I don't have one at the ballpark. That's the easiest answer. But I'm already traveling, 4, 5, 6 bags if you include my personal bag with it. And it's just, it's so much that, I have to part it off one of my freshmen. I wind up carrying 3 or 4 bags myself. It's one more thing to keep up with. And since I'm doing everything at the hotel anyway, I typically have my own room, the double beds. So I'll use the second bed as the treatment surface, and nobody gets treatment unless they've showered first.
Right. Well, yeah, that's definitely for sure. But
so Mike, I guess both of you, Josh said he goes with 5 or 6 bags. How many do you typically travel with? You said that there was obviously multiple Normatex, Game Readies, things like that. What's your number?
3, and that's including a splint bag. So I have a rehab bag, my splint bag, and my med kit. And that rehab bag, admittedly, I also throw multiple things into bags. So it's like that has my little sideline kit and some things like that. But basically, I've got my personal bag, the 3 total bags that include everything I need for hockey. And then, if you count the Normatex and Game Readies, because they come in their own containers, but the players are usually responsible for those just because there's a group of guys that they like to use them. So they personally say they just take responsibility for them. And I just get them back at the end of the trip. So while they are my supplies, really it's, the guys using them. So me personally, and I think Jeremy, I can't remember if he retweeted a picture or if I tweeted it at him of my luggage carrier, Jenga, pretty much, with everything I get from my bus to the hotel room. But I got the system down pretty well. It all fits pretty well, including my Oakworks table, which honestly is, while it looks big, is actually pretty light and pretty sufficient for treatment on the road.
Yeah. Mike, what did in the high school setting, what are you doing? How many are you bringing, I guess?
So, it's going to depend on what sport it is, obviously. If it's football, I have my big trunk for the sideline, splint bag, crutch bag, AED. And then I also travel with a kit on wheels that goes into the hotel with me. And then that also goes and becomes my locker room kit. And then we also tend to take a 10-gallon cooler with us for the hotel, for Gatorade, for team meals and things like that. And then because I'm paranoid, I also always travel with an ice chest on our bus trips, just because I want to make sure that I always have some ice with me, because we don't always know what, and that's a minimum, an ice chest. again, with football, we may have to take everything with us, with all of our coolers and everything else. But at a minimum, a cooler and an ice chest. So you're talking 6-7 items, I guess.
Do either one or the other one of you two have to travel with the coolers, with the ice chests, that stuff, especially for like TV time, icy Gatorade, icy Powerade, whatever, like with us or in the football setting? Obviously we typically have to have it out there in basketball, football, have whatever we're sponsored by or we get ours through. So what about either one of you two?
I only take a 10-gallon, I'll take a 10-gallon Gatorade cooler and Gatorade powder if it's not going to be provided. In conference, we all provide Gatorade or Powerade for each other. Out of conference, some of the midweek trips, I have to take my own for that, but otherwise, no. Our football program's locked in with that contract. Typically, nobody cares about baseball, even when we are on TV.
As far as us, we don't have. We have contracts with sponsors as far as our home games are concerned. So when we're at home games, we'll provide coolers and things like that for our particular sponsorships. When we go on the road, I don't have a requirement to have a certain cooler in a visible of, say, a camera or anything like that. Typically, it's a lot of the college hockey programs are really good. We take care of each other when we're on the road. So everything I need to travel with, I don't, because it's there. When I get there, they provide all the coolers, all the water, everything I need. So I'm usually at the mercy of whatever their sponsorships are. So if we're a Powerade school, I might go to across town to a Gatorade school. And that's just the way it is with some places. But usually you run into that with like the bigger schools. So when we play Notre Dame, for example, there's obviously a much larger athletic program there than a lot of Hockey East schools, or a lot of the Big Ten teams that now have their own hockey league, like Penn State, Minnesota, and Ohio and Michigan and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I know before Baylor had a Gatorade contract, when UT would roll into town, they had to bring Gatorade coolers. That was part of their contract. Obviously, University of Texas, big time, big money. Their contract stipulated they did have to have Gatorade coolers. So, I would provide product for them, obviously water, ice, that stuff, but it had to go in their cooler.
Yeah, and plus in hockey, there's only so much square footage to put anything, and a lot of that's taken care of, like board advertisements. And really, in hockey, you see a lot of like the towels. If you watch a lot of hockey, you'll see when they do interviews and stuff, they'll have like a towel of a sponsor around their neck. You'll see a lot of that on the Canadian hockey channels and things like that. But we don't really have any stipulations from our league on that end.
All right, so here we go, guys. You have one backpack you can take. All right, and let's go ahead and say we're going through. We'll go on a bus, and then we'll see what modifications you guys make for on a plane. So you got one backpack you can take on this trip that you're going with your team. What are you going to put in it? And Hopper, we're going to start with you.
Okay, so I actually had to do this my first year here in Texas. We flew to Chicago to play a high school football game, and so I literally took my kit on wheels, my Kramer kit, and that had to provide everything I did for that I normally have 5 or 6 things. I had one bag. I had my athletic tape and basic wound care supplies, and actually relied on the other school to provide us with everything else. If we were going to need a splint, if we were going to need crutches, we were going to get it from them, and then if we had to pay for it, to take care of that, we would have done so. They also provided all of our coolers, and they even provided water bottles for us.
Okay. For me, obviously basic wound care stuff, a roll or two of tape, power plugs, something like that. CPR mask, the QR wound seal that basically forms an artificial scab, so that if I have a cut, I can get somebody fixed up and back in the game. Clippers, tweezers, eye care solution stuff, and then phone charger and a flash drive, preferably definitely password protected, but with insurance information and family contact information, in case of an emergency.
Yeah, so I actually used to just travel like this because I'm kind of like a one bag packing type of guy when I travel on my own. So I try and condense and only take what's really necessary. So for when I worked with college soccer, I actually did only travel with a single kit whenever I went somewhere. But a lot of it is, especially like if I were to do it with hockey now, I could still do it with mostly I need blood and PPE pretty much. If you can think of hockey, you can imagine how that goes. So mostly gloves, cotton balls, skin lube, non-adhering pads, and all that fun stuff, Dermabond and skin stitch, steri strips, and everything like that. CPR, some tape. And then I would really take, honestly, a lot of the stuff I can fit now for my rehab stuff. So I can take a Compex, mini bands, and really my phone charger and lots of little things that make your life miserable if you don't have. Because a lot of what dictates hockey from like a care standpoint is really their equipment. And when we travel with a full-time equipment manager, that stuff's not my responsibility. So I can actually pare down what I have to travel with considerably. I know some high school ATs aren't always in that boat where you kind of end up being the traveling equipment manager as well. And when I started in high school, I was in that boat too. So I'm really fortunate in that regard. But I also have an accordion finder of all my insurance information. Even though I like try to keep everything digital, when I don't have a computer, I'll still need it. So I still have that printed out, and I usually take with that directions to the local hospital to wherever I'm traveling. So if I need it real quick and my phone's dead, I can at least get paper instructions and do it the old-fashioned way.
It's a great idea that probably a lot of people don't think of is just having those directions to wherever you're going, that hospital. I mean, typically we think whoever we're visiting or whoever we're there with, they're going to have somebody that can at least tell us or get us there. But in certain instances, there might not be. So especially probably in the high school setting, I wouldn't think that in college football, but in different sports, that's absolutely a possibility. So for that. So I guess you kind of covered a little bit of this. What are some packing techniques? I know when we play load the truck Jenga, trying to get all of our stuff on to go to a game and then go to another game. And then finally at the end of the year, we have a week-long trip, potentially. Haven't recently, but for bowl games. What packing techniques do y'all use? I guess that somewhat went over, but go for it.
Yeah, so I think like in addition to that, like I said, the reason I say like I like everything not electronic is even when I started my first job, I worked out in Eastern Colorado covering high school sports. When you drive out of the main city, at 15 minutes you're kind of okay, and then at 20 minutes you have no cell coverage. So you're back into the old-fashioned, I gotta go find a landline if we're calling 911. So that's kind of why that's how I started my career. But for long trips for hockey, like if I'm gonna be gone a long time or go on an airplane, I consolidate everything into a larger bag just to keep it together for TSA. That can be a blessing and a curse. So when I had to travel to Michigan State in December, there was a little hiccup with our baggage flying there, and I got to Michigan and the only thing that showed up was my crutch bag, and the rest of it was still in Boston. So if you're consolidated in that regard, it can kind of actually hurt you, but it also does keep things together when everything gets there correctly. But that's where my other tip comes from. If you're going to get caught in the rain or even a slight chance, make sure there's at least a water resistant bag, because if they leave it on the tarmac, it's going to be out there for hours. I was fortunate enough that where we were traveling and playing, they understood the situation. We're just going to provide everything I needed. And I'm really thankful for that. And luckily everything got there by game time. But that's a big one, is if you consolidate bags, you always know what's going. And I think me and Josh, we can probably talk about this. I'm a stickler for lists. I have a big, long, laminated list of everything I travel with. And every single time I leave this campus, I go through it and make sure I have everything. It's lots of little things that you probably pack once and I haven't used for a whole season. But the day I don't check that it's there, it never fails, is the day I need it. And then it's usually really inconvenient at that point. So that's definitely the big one that I think we should do pretty frequently. But that comes from being a habit of from enjoying backpacking in my spare time. So if I'm 20 miles into the woods and I forget something, I'm going to have a bad time.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of want to piggyback off of what Mike said about, when he was in Eastern Colorado. My first job out of grad school, I was at Mary Hardin Baylor. I was very fortunate, D3 school, but we had D1 level facilities and supplies. But then when we went on the road to Sul Ross State out in Alpine, Texas, beautiful place, but they didn't even have 911. You had to know the local emergency number, which is something I grew up with in Deep East Texas, but I hadn't seen that in 10 years at that point. And so yeah, definitely, I mentioned the USB, and I keep that in my personal backpack that I take to the field, but I also keep the accordion file, a waterproof accordion file with, hard copy insurance and, concussion plans that get signed if an athlete gets a concussion, and also directions, that the host athletic trainer has sent out to different medical facilities. In terms of packing, checklist, go through it. I don't worry quite as much about the midweek trips as long as everything looks good and it was still good the weekend before. But every time we leave campus for a full weekend trip, I completely unpack and repack my kit. I found even if I have a checklist and I think something's there, I get on the road and it's not. So Mike Hopper, what you were saying about guys not taping the wrist, that's where my wrist tape comes from, is the stuff that's gotten crushed in the kit over the week before, tape that's gotten too hot, stuff that's just kind of a pain in my butt to use. I put it out and let the guys do their swag taping with it. Within my kit, everything is small. It goes in little Tupperware containers. So I take all the gels, topicals, that kind of stuff, put it into 3-ounce, TSA approved containers. Then that goes into a Tupperware container. I've actually got, I think, 6 different containers to organize all of my stuff. One of them is all of the topical creams and lotions. One is, Tums, contact solution, eye wash, contact cases, because eyes are a big deal in baseball. Another one's got all the metal objects, the couple of apples, tweezers, that kind of stuff. And then, everything else, I try and put in Ziploc baggies or something to try and keep that dry. In my personal packing, I learned this the hard way with our soccer program here. Spent 4 years working with soccer. And with that program, they traveled with bottled water. And so when the bags were too heavy, or if they didn't get it done before they got to the airport, it went into their personal bags. And the first time everything you own gets soaked on a bright sunny day because somebody's bag got crushed, you learn. So all of my personal stuff goes in vacuum bags, and that way, if it gets left on the tarmac, if it's pouring rain outside, I'm not worried about having something dry to wear when I get there.
Something I would always think about too is, this was obviously from my junior college days and being up in Kansas and starting out in Eastern Kansas and going for a game in Western Kansas, kind of what you said, the knowing that how it feels if you show up and all of your clothes are wet or something like that. But also just kind of having that, I know that I just need to pack for everything clothing wise as an athletic trainer. Because you can start out in Eastern Kansas and it's 100 degrees. And by the time that you get to Dodge City, Kansas and are playing a football game, it's 6. And then by the end of the game, it's 55 and raining, and just not that it's not a 55 that you want to have. It's that 55 coming off of the Rocky Mountains and just hitting you right in the face, and you're wearing a t-shirt and something and pants just because, or wearing a polo and pants just because you thought it was going to be a nice day. So, how does that, those packing techniques, I guess, bring into to the high school as well, Mike?
So, okay. So, when we travel, like for football, we have a 14-foot cargo trailer that we travel with. Our longer trips, when we take charter buses, everything beneath the bus. Regardless, what I figured out, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, soccer, I've traveled with all these different sports. High school kids don't have a clue how to pack an area. Okay, whether that's our 14-foot trailer, whether that's the bays of the charter bus, whatever, they don't have a clue. Okay,
Mike, that doesn't change.
College kids
Well,
don't know that.
Okay, but so I had our football coach here at BL when I got here 2.5 years ago. He had a couple different rules for travel. Number one was pack 2 days in advance. That way you had lots of time to remember everything that you forgot. And so that's, one of those things that stuck with me. I also tend to start packing, like for football, I start packing on Saturday after a game Friday night, or even Sunday after a Saturday game, whatever. What we've also figured out is nobody does any packing for sports medicine but me. My students don't, and even my assistant doesn't. They don't do any packing, and they do very little sideline setup because I'm that anal. But also, when we go to pack the bus or we pack the trailer, I pack both of them. Whether it's on our trailer with all of our trunks and everything, I pack all of them because I have a way that I want things put in and make sure things get put in correctly and are actually going to fit. When it comes to the buses, that way also, so that my stuff, because it has to be on, and then we figure out how to make everything else work around it. I also tend to, for football especially, I have a binder, 3-ring binder, that has all of their, we call it a participation contract and an emergency contact form, printed for every football player, drill team girl, cheerleader, every kid that's going to be on that trip. That form's in one binder in my bag. So, because we're taking 150 kids on a trip, so that's all in one central location. So I guess, that's really about it. Our other trips, I don't worry too much about what I'm packing. I take my big kit and I don't use much out of it normally, so I tend to have everything with me and I don't freak out as much. Football, I freak out. Everything else, not so much.
All right.
I definitely agree with what you said about packing early. I don't with my med kit, because I find that guys go through that. That's always the night before. I always pack my personal bag 2 nights before, because I've learned that the hard way also, that, have a midweek game, something happens, wind up at the ER until 5 a.m. and you got to turn around and leave at 6:30. That's not a lot of time to pack. So I always do that 2 nights before.
All right, Greg, you have experience with traveling with baseball, working at Wheaton College and traveling with other sports, but you're also now at school health. So what are some of the things that you've brought to school health to help athletic trainers as they're preparing to pack, or like Mike said, where his his bags are getting wet sitting outside on the tarmac? So,
well, sure. Everything that you guys are saying, I had experienced myself just with years at a D3 college and high school and everything else in between. And a lot of the things I discovered through the years is that I used to carry a really large kit at first, and I packed everything in it. And then I realized I only used 1/3 of the things that were in it, even with football. So I started going to smaller kits and then packing more specialized, like a taping kit or rehab or modalities kit if I was staying in a hotel the night before. And so when I was reflecting on that, I was looking for things that travel easier. So for an example, we used to try to pack our regular stem unit, a 4-channel IFC stem unit, which for one took something out of the athletic training room, and they weren't able to use it while we traveled. And also I just didn't want to have a big expensive machine with me in case it ever got lost or damaged. And so one item that I found, was pretty excited, was I hated using regular little TENS units back in the day because I just felt like a TENS unit didn't do much. But I have found some companies now that they actually come up with an IFC that can be put in a small unit the size of a TENS unit, and they're relatively inexpensive. So like this is called the Intensity Twin Stem 3, and it actually has Russian IFC, TENS, and so forth. It's not the best quality as far as you'd feel like from your regular Chattanooga or Richmond machine, but it definitely gets the job done. And this costs about $150. And also it fits in a small case that can fit into a bag that's easy for travel. And so if I have to do a hotel treatment or if I have to do a bus treatment, I found something really small and simple like that. And then just what you guys have done is we talked about using more modular units, a bigger bag to carry all your things in. We're looking for luggage or things that you can take that will fit on a plane, that will be durable, that you can put your kit, maybe your bottles, your splint kits, and all those sorts of things all in one bag so that you don't have them scattered within 5 bags to that extreme. So mostly what we're looking for is good quality products that you can use on the road. If you lose them, it's not a tragedy, but also packs really nicely.
One thing that I will add to that as well is something that I've found. This is obviously another issue, but with football, we typically bring an IV kit. So you have IV solution, things like that go on the plane with you after the game. So if you have someone cramping or something like that, we typically do a lot of flight travel in college football. So that is something that I've always brought. And I always had there's many a times that I've gotten the pat down from TSA and different individuals due to that, because you're bringing on a lot of fluid, you're bringing on a bunch of needles, you're bringing on catheters, you're bringing on a bunch of lines, you're bringing on stuff like that, and all things that they question you for. But for that kit, I ended up going into some medic tactical bags, and I know there are some tactical bags that people are selling now. I actually went with one that I found through a different company, or not a different company, but through an actual tactical company, Blackhawk, and that their mole type setup that they've got on a lot of their stuff, where you can attach a lot of those things together. And I think that, am I right, that some of the sports medicine bags are actually getting that too? That was something I had purchased years ago.
Well, absolutely. We introduced some tactical bags from 511 Tactical that I found to be awesome. And first, right now, the ones we carry are primarily just a personal carry, like a shoulder bag, that sort of things. But the Mole system is I think fantastic, that it has the outside straps that you can add other bags that you feel like are important to it. Also know that the Mole system is universal. So like you talked about using a Blackhawk bag, and if you like that bag, you can use it. But if you find some attachments that are from 511 or Condor or even Merit, they will fit on that bag. And so you can make it to what you want it to be. Another company that I know that Mueller has partnered with through the years is Merit. And Merit made bags primarily for EMS, but Mueller has adapted several of those bags into their bags, and they do have the Mole system on them as well.
Completely agree with that. Yeah, my personal backpack, the one that goes to the field with me, is actually a Mole system. So I use that, bring my extra clothes to work. But when I go on the road, that's my personal bag that goes everywhere I go. And yeah, hook a ton of stuff onto it.
Yeah,
I've actually done a adaptive 1911 holster for my sideline kit just because I didn't like the kit moving a whole lot and bouncing up and down when you go running out on the field. So you get that nice tie to your leg where the 1911 holster is supposed to be, but you can take off the holster and actually put on some sort of medical kit and things like that. And it makes it really nice and easy. I probably look a little funny on the sideline, but that's all right.
No, I found the somehow in the tactical industry, they've really learned how to take on organization and also adaptability for the individual very, very strongly. And so I've been amazed. The company that I really like to push is 511, and there's several other bags. And when I demonstrate the bag to people, and I talk to them, I say, even though this bag was not designed for sports medicine, there's many things in sports medicine that I wouldn't add or take away to this. And so it gets, if you ever have a chance to, obviously, giving a plug for school health, if you ever go on our website and look up 511, you can see some of those bags there. But if you ever have a chance to go to a store, I went to a 511 store one time when I was in Las Vegas, and I lost my mind because not only do they have all the great bags, but accessories, and I know as athletic trainers, we're all gadgety people, all sorts of gadgets you can do there, but also even some of the clothing that's designed out there that you can even carry your personal items, gauze, gloves, pens, whatever you want, built even into your clothing. I think is definitely an area that we really haven't tapped into as strongly as we could be in sports medicine.
All right, Hopper, I want you to talk to me about the plane trip, because I remember seeing a picture that you use the opportunity to educate the TSA agent about what an athletic trainer does. So kind of how did you prepare your bag, and then how did you prepare questions and answers and that kind of thing?
I don't remember doing any of that, but the only relationship I had with a TSA agent was she tried to come tell me what we were going to do as far as getting all of our kids through. And I told her, I said, look, lady, I make 0 decisions on this trip. I'd literally been at this school for 3 weeks, and all of our administrators were standing 5 feet away from me. But with my kit, I have it's a Kramer Traveler Trekker kit, whatever, on wheels. And like I said, I put everything in it that I was going to need for a football road trip into that bag, or at least what I was going to make for it. And I actually used, rather than like one of you was saying you use Tupperware containers to separate your stuff, I actually used towels. And I was just laying towels down in there, and that actually kept like my tape stacked fairly well. And then we took, like I said, we took the bare minimum of everything that we possibly could in order to make that trip work for the weekend. That way we didn't have to pay out outrageous baggage fees that the school was already paying on that trip. Because, high school football program, we're not used to paying $4,000 in baggage fees for a single, for a flight. So I think we ended up paying almost somewhere between $7,000 and $8,000 in baggage fees total round trip. Like I said, that's a major expense for a high school program. Some colleges may not see that as that big of an expense, but for us, that's a significant expense.
That's a normal $4,000 to $5,000 is a normal trip for us, and we do it every other weekend.
All right, so Josh, then talk to me a little bit more about how do you prepare your carry-on bag or your carry-on kit so that there's not an issue?
No metal. So what I do when I say 4 to 5 bags, Normatec and arm and leg sleeves for that go in one small bag that one of my student athletes carries on. Game Ready goes in its custom branded kit that one of my student athletes carries on. And then in my personal bag, in my backpack, I'll put a roll or two of tape, Band-Aids, Neosporin, and then I've got a small tackle box that I put individual packets of all the different OTC meds that I might need, and that just goes in my personal bag. So in the airport, I can take care of the basic, hey, my knee's aching or my shoulder's sore, or if somebody gets a cut off of the baggage, something like that. One time I did screw up and leave my Super Pro scissors in my bag. And I did learn that those are legal to take on. They're less than 5 inches with a blunt tip, but they do question you for quite a while about it. So learned that one by accident, and I try not to do it regularly.
One thing I've learned about, especially I've been doing a lot of traveling, and I carry Super Pros with me, and I also carry the Leatherman Raptors that fold up. And what it used to be is I used to leave them in my bag, and then sure enough, every time they pull my bag and they pull those pieces out and they look them over, and I'd always get delayed. And so one TSA agent just said, put them in the tray and pull them out ahead of time. That'll save you time. They might question you on them, but it does save time if you just put them out in front of them ahead of time. Then that way you're still collecting your bag, you're collecting your things, and you can easily just say, hey, they're TSA compliant, they're less than whatever. And it saved me a lot of headaches since then about doing that.
That was something I always did when I was traveling with IV solution and things like that. Just pull the IV solution out, just like you do when you're pulling your computer. Any of those items that are going to probably flag as something that you're like, oh man, just throw it out, throw it in one of the boxes, slide it through. And like with that fluid, what they would always have to do is they'd have to test it. So I knew at the end they were going to pull that box, my bag would go through. They would do their test. They do a wipe test on it, make sure that nothing came up as positive, and then they'd let me go. A lot of the time also, I would, when I first started traveling with that bag or traveling with those things, I would leave it in. They would question me. I'd get the old pat down and stuff like that. But after I started doing that, I had no problems.
Yeah, I know the times in the past I've traveled with the portable HivaMat or HivaMat, however you're supposed to say it, that tends to get you searched for bomb residue. They pretty much every time I've gone through TSA with one of those, it gets swab tested. I get delayed and, question, what is this? What does it do? Apparently baby powder sets things off.
The DMS, the deep muscle stimulator, they will think you're trying to come on with a gun as well. So they'll really grab you and we used to give that to students to try and carry it. One of our athletic training students, and we decided that we're going to stop doing that. So that moved to one of the full-time staff members.
Yeah. Also, don't take your protein powder out of the container and put it in gallon Ziploc bags.
That's correct.
Don't do that.
All right. So what other airplane tips do we have for traveling with a team? What else you guys got?
Learn the kids, learn what makes them tick. If you have somebody that's going to get sick, take Dramamine, whatever. And then me personally, I like to learn the ones that are deathly afraid of flying. And, like, hey, do you see that tape on the wing?
I always like to say, make sure that you have, your crampers, check in with them, especially after a game, and always have some salt tabs, some sort of salt, even if it's getting them to get some salty food, but just making sure that you're checking on them before they get on the plane, because that's when they're going to have the issue.
Have you had kids cramping on the plane?
Oh yes, many times. Or the bus right before you're fixing to get onto the plane. And luckily enough now, in a lot of those aspects or instances, we've done an IV, we've ran a line or put a couple bags in, depending upon what it is, and are ready to rock and roll. But a lot of people don't have that availability. So where the salt tabs and stuff like that, as well as just educating them, which we all do anyway, prior to them getting on the plane, to, hey, these are things. Getting on a plane, you're going to feel a little bit more dehydrated. So,
all right. So, are you allowed to do an IV on a plane? Like, if you got a kid cramping, or you just have to say, all right, drink some water and suck it up?
Yeah, no. But now we are typically on a private charter. So, but yeah, usually they allow us to do anything necessary. But yeah, luckily never had to do one on a plane. Right before, right after, things like that, yes.
Gotcha.
I say one of the things I'd say is also know your kids who have nut allergies. That make sure that because a lot of planes still serve nuts, and so if you have those kids that are really have a strong nut allergy, make sure that one, notify them that there will be nuts on the plane, and two, that they have the proper EpiPen, those sorts of things out there, because you can't do it. I actually had an athlete that had a severe nut allergy that the team had to fly on one airline, and me and this one kid had to fly on a separate airline because they actually had a nut-free flight. But obviously that won't happen all the time, and I felt like a bigger pain than it was a success.
I agree with the nut allergy. We had that come up right before we flew to Chicago. Like literally on Tuesday, we were notified that one of the kids had a nut allergy that she had not listed on any type of medical history. And so both myself and her coach were issued EpiPens by our school nurse to have with us. And actually, surprisingly, we had no issues. Like I put that in my messenger bag that I took on the plane with me, and we had no issues with TSA, never said a word about it. And fortunately, we didn't have any issue, but we all had EpiPens. That way we were ready in case something did happen. Of course, now we carry EpiPens everywhere that we go. In all of our kits, we carry them as athletic trainers. And then we also carry them in our AED backpacks that we take out to games with us. That way we make sure that we have them.
A completely different topic, but we are actually not allowed to have an EpiPen that is not a prescription from the student per our school district. So that's something I, at this point, would never have to worry about. But again, that's not where we're discussing here. So. Okay, so we've discussed a lot of airport travel. If you think of something else, come back to it and throw it in there. But one of the things I know you guys kind of discussed some. Josh said that before the season, y'all send out a list to where the closest emergency facilities and this are. What kind of conversations or how do you go about contacting those doctors or getting in touch of, hey, who do I get a hold of in this situation? Hopper, let's start with you.
Our overnight travel is going to be in the playoffs, so I don't have the luxury of figuring that out earlier on in the season. So basically, we're going to reach out. What I try to do is once we find out who we're playing, and I do this during football season every week, contacting that athletic trainer and communicating as far as hydration, and other amenities that are provided, treatment tables, whatever. As far as like your hospitals and things like that, unfortunately at this point, I don't do any of that. So that's something that we can look to start addressing. And I actually need to do that today then, because we go to College Station tomorrow for the weekend. So always adding something new.
Yeah, a lot of ours hasn't changed too much because Hockey East is Hockey East. Where it really comes into play is when we play non-conference. The majority of our hockey schools are pretty much either in or near big city centers. Like here in Boston, I'm 1.5 miles from 4 hospitals. They're all level 1 trauma centers, so it's not too much of an issue when you come to this town. But when we go to places like, say, Colgate in Hamilton, New York, or St. Lawrence up in Canton, the level of medical facility near where you're participating can vary. And it's important to know that, hey, if I can't get something done in Canton, New York, I might have to find transportation that's not an ambulance 45 minutes from here to get, the treatment I need at a different facility or that sort of thing. So it really kind of takes looking at in advance. Like I said, we're kind of fortunate in hockey because the injury rate usually dictates what's available to you, because there's everybody watches hockey at some point and can understand why we need to know where this sort of stuff is before we play a game during the weekend. And we always have physicians present, so that's always useful as well.
Yeah. preseason, I typically send a letter to all of our visiting teams, details both what I provide and also medical facilities and contact information. Yeah, and then each week before I host a game, I'm going to typically follow up with the athletic trainer from that school if I know who they are, find out what they need specifically, and kind of offer what assistance I can. Now, when I go on the road, typically I will at some point in the week leading up to it, if I haven't necessarily been there before or don't know the athletic trainer, I'll reach out to them. Even if they did, send me a preseason letter, just kind of clarify again and update on anything that's changed. Once we get into conference though, there's 9 baseball schools. We're all friendly. We all talk. We have a group text that typically goes on all season. So we have that line of communication that we typically do quite a bit to help each other out. And I know if I'm going to Fort Worth or Austin or whatever, that they're going to have supplies. They're going to have a doctor available. It's the non-conference. It's the smaller schools that we go to that kind of lead me into a little bit more research going into it.
I found before I left my regular position, it was common practice for schools to put their emergency procedures out on their websites. Not only that, but list the facilities that served their schools and even gave maps. And so we just made it a regular practice to check the website of the sports medicine website of the team we're visiting. And if that information wasn't available, then that's when we would maybe dig a little deeper, connecting with the athletic trainer, or even as simple as just using Google Maps, what's the closest emergency complex to whatever facility we're playing at.
And I just throw a link into the chat on the left here. I don't actually know who has the ability to see that, but that's our visiting team information page. I just finished building. So anybody that visits our school can go to that link and you'll get staff information, what we offer. But we made sure all the athletic facility locations, important phone numbers, and external medical facilities go right to Google Maps. So if you have a smartphone, it'll pull right up and show you directions from wherever your GPS says you are and where you need to be. It also has all our EAPs on it too. So that's publicly available.
That's something that I think a lot of people don't, or sometimes people don't do. They don't put that information out there enough. They don't reach out to those people that are visiting. I think that does happen more than we probably think that it does, but I would always send an email prior to the season with all of our information. One thing in that email that I actually stole, and I will say I stole it from Army, and they did a great job of this, is in that email and in that list of everything that was going on. They also attached pictures, which was really cool obviously for us with football, having to know what we have for treatment tables, what we have for taping tables, what we have for IV tables, what we have for whatever else that we might need. It showed an actual picture there of the locker room, thereof where your athletic training area is, even though it was kind of just a blocked off area. But that was great, just because they showed what we had, so that somebody, even though I had already been there before, I could tell exactly what the location was going to look like. And I started adding that into everything that we sent out this year, especially because with Rice, our visiting facility had changed. So everyone that was coming in didn't really know what to expect coming in. So that made it a lot easier. And I know I appreciated that. And I hope that that's something that you can add, that certain people can add to their facility just to see what they've got.
That's a great idea. At the high school level, our visiting facilities are between nothing and non-existent. I mean, let's be realistic. Depending on where we go, because like we played in our state semifinal game this year, we played at a 20,000 seat high school stadium that had a full athletic training room with like 3 treatment tables or 3 taping tables in it, and an ice machine and the whole 9 yards. And then the next week in the state championship, we literally taped off of portable tables in the showers, you know. And so having an idea what we're looking at, I think that's an awesome idea.
All right.
You know, that actually,
Go ahead.
no, I was just saying what you just mentioned about sometimes the facilities that you're preparing for were a lot different than what you expected from place to place. That made a lot of difference too. And I had a lot of student workers that were females. And so we even packed kits differently, knowing that, all right, we're going to be taping in a locker room. So I went separate supplies so that we could just cordon them off in one area or what have you. So that's always some things to be aware of. How you pack is what type of facility you have, especially with even what type of genders you have in your staff treating your athletes.
We had to basically we set up, and my assistant took the furthest in you could go, and she had to stay there until the team went out on the field, basically, for that reason.
Yeah, when I worked with soccer, there were times that I had to tape off, like with me kneeling on a basketball court and the girls sitting on the back of a Hydra basketball goal. And then there were other times that, you know, the taping area was in the corner of the locker room, and it was, okay, we have to tape, you know, 15 girls. All right, I'm going to stay this way, just don't turn around. And those are always, you know, little touchy situations, but, you know, we find a way to accommodate.
Yep. All right. We've got lots and lots of great tips. I actually reached out to Alsiha Pennington from the ATVantage, and she sent me a bunch of information as well. She travels internationally, travels with Team USA volleyball and rugby and all sorts of different stuff. And just a couple of things she said. I know, Mike, you said you travel with a table. She said she prefers the Astrolite table, which is actually a chiropractor table, but it's very light. It's kind of expensive, but if you're carrying it, it's kind of well worth it. Make sure you use your modalities. I know both you guys said your like Graston or Washaw or ISDAM, whatever the initials are, tools. So using your hands as your modalities. I know that's a big thing for Hoppper there too. So, and then similar to what we're just saying here, research the area. So if you need to bring bug spray or stuff for allergies, like you guys are saying, that those kids that are motion sickness and that kind of thing. I know you guys were talking about water bottles, so you want to make sure that those athletes hydrate, so that you're not like Sean having kids cramp up on the airplane or having to stick a noodle in somebody as they're walking down the runway. And then if you have them bring a reusable water bottle, it saves stuff that you have to carry instead of having to bring a 6-pack of water bottles, and they bring their own stuff and responsible for that. So, and then she said she likes to bring a full-size suitcase and then pack her kit inside of the suitcase. So you pack half of the full-size suitcase with your stuff and half of it with the athletic training or medical stuff that you need. So I've got the picture of all the tweets she sent out there and the show notes. So we're going to go with one last tip. And actually, let me start. I'll start with you, Josh. We're going to go one last tip for traveling and doing treatments on the road. Go.
Be creative. We've done massage, Normatec, anything you can think of in the aisle of a bus. Be creative. Use the space you got.
All right. And Josh, somebody wants to get a hold of you. How are they going to do that?
My information is posted on the Baylor Athletic Training website. Twitter, it's at MinBearFrog. Email Josh_Ogden@Baylor.edu.
Excellent. Next up, we have Hopper.
Yeah, I agree. Be creative. Find a way to make it work. That's what we do every day. We just take it on the road with us. You know, in athletic training, we don't have, I mean, great that we have clinics, you know, athletic training room, whatever. We're all used to working in whatever we've got, whether it's at home or on the road. Find a way to make it work, you'll do so.
All right. Somebody wants to get a hold of you.
My contact information is on our athletics website, blfriars.org. Twitter, MNHopper, the number 1S. You can find me on Twitter all the time.
All the time. Literally
all the time.
All the time. All right. Up next, we got McKenney.
One of the biggest tips I have is we kind of got to it, but didn't really talk much about it, is ask the people you're traveling with what they want you to travel with. I think sometimes we think so much about what's convenient for us. A small gesture is convenient for everybody. When I used to work college baseball, Josh can sympathize, the aisle of a bus is about a little bit wider than me. Those old orange Gatorade coolers, the most important thing I brought on our 14-hour one-way bus trips was that cooler. Because if I put it in the aisle, it extended the 2 seats my coach would lay on by 8 inches. And so now he had a full bed with his legs not hanging off into the aisle. And when you're on a bus for 14 hours one way and then 14 in the next, that you don't get stuck in a blizzard, that can be considered a life and death decision right there from a sleep standpoint. So all the other, stereotypical AT stuff, like when I was going to say that's the only cooler I ever took on the road with me is because, and that's why it never filled with ice. It was part of a bed. So yeah, ask the people you're traveling with because you guys are going to live together on the road. So making them comfortable matters.
All right, that's a great tip I didn't even think about. So, all right, Greg, you're up. Oh, wait. I'm sorry, Mike. Somebody wants to get a hold of you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so the GoNU directory, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. It's my first initial, Mike, m.mckenny@northeastern.edu. On Twitter, it's @McKenney_ATC, and I periodically pop up on the BOC blog too.
All right, excellent. Now it's your turn, Greg.
I found that hopefully my heavy duty treatments are staying behind and they're not traveling with me, so I didn't have to take a lot of heavy duty therapy equipment. But again, I would check to see about what athletes preferred what before a game, and try to bring the modalities or what equipment that we needed to accommodate those. And so just knowing who you're taking, and I always was trying to pack as light as possible, and creativity was just a big part of it. So hotel rooms have all sorts of ice, hot water, towels, that we created all sorts of unique modalities just with just our own ingenuity.
All right. If someone wants to win a school health gift card, they can go to sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/schoolhealth, and they can register to win the school health gift card. Or if they want to get a hold of you, Greg, how are they going to do that?
Just my email is very simple, gevans@schoolhealth.com, and be happy to answer any questions. But also, I love learning about new products, new ideas, and what's great out there in sports medicine. It's one of the exciting things about my job.
All right. And Sean Reedy.
Jeremy.
Go ahead.
Jeremy, I just thought of what my tip actually should be. Portable power strip. Our sports information director and myself, when I worked with softball, used to always joke we're going to create a hotel chain and name it Outlets because they never have enough outlets.
That's a great idea. All right, Sean Reedy.
My tip would definitely be, don't forget where you came from with regard to your hands. Be able to use your hands, because no matter if you don't have a Normatec or whatever, a Game Ready, a Stim Unit, a Mark Pro, H-Wave, whatever it is that you travel with, all these things that are great things that, we think about and we say, oh, I've got to have this. Oh, my guys have to have this. Sometimes if you just put your hands on them and you just work on them and you do the things that we all know the best, the massage, the stuff like that, you're going to get them just as well, and you're going to get them feeling just as good as if you did any of that stuff, or if they did any of those other things. And be ready for anything, no matter what it is, because you're going to get on a bus in between San Marcos, Texas and Lubbock, Texas, and somebody's going to get food poisoning and vomit all over one of their fellow athletes, and you're going to have to be ready for that. So,
all right. So my tip again Sean, how do we get a hold of you?
Sean Reedy _ATC, Sean Reedy ATC @gmail.com.
All right. So my tip is work in a Texas public high school, and you don't have to take overnight trips or travel with teams. Got it?
Remember, he said public school.
Yeah.
Public, yeah.
And to qualify that, teams that don't go to like state tournaments as well either. So pick one of those schools. All right. This episode is sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/traveling ATR. Again, sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/traveling ATR. So definitely School Health is one of the supporters of the sports medicine broadcast, and you can register to win a gift card there. This episode is being released during March, which is National Athletic Training Month, and there are lots of giveaways up on the sports medicine broadcast. So check out the sportsmedicinebroadcast.com, and then there's a tab up top that says NATM or sportsmedicinebroadcast.com/NATM. Check out some of those giveaways. So all of you guys here, part of the show, check it out, register, share it. The more times you share it with your friends, the more entries you get, the more likely it is you are to be chosen. And then again, just help share the sports medicine broadcast and then some of these great people who are involved in supporting what we're doing and changing the way that sports medicine education is done. So for everybody that was part of the show, Josh, Mike, Greg, Hopper, and Sean, that is a wrap. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.